Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session. With the government's ongoing commitment to digitising and streamlining the UK's justice system, digital transformation is starting to make a difference within policing, courts, and the prison and probation services. Today, we'll discuss how technology fits into the criminal justice system and how it can improve internal processes as well as improving the lives of both its employees and its inmates. I'm Liz Halifax-Smith, and I'm the Dragon Professional Sales Manager at Nuance Communications for UK and Ireland. And today we have a great panel for this fascinating discussion. Firstly, let me introduce you to Dr. Nasser Saibi, OBE and Chief Executive of Microlink UK.
Hello.
And with Nasser, we have Adrian Crossley, who is Head of Crime and Addiction at the Centre for Social Justice. Adrian is a former criminal barrister, and he oversaw the publication of the report Digital Technology in Prisons last year. And he has a wealth of expertise of the criminal justice system from his time practicing in the courts and as a barrister. So welcome, Adrian.
Pleased to be here, thank you.
So let's get started. Nasser, let me start please by asking you how you think technology can dramatically help reduce pressure in prisons, please.
Good afternoon, Liz, and thank you for having me. Well, the neurodiversity has been known to be impacting both prison guards and prisoners. For years, we've known that the number of people on the neurodiversity spectrum in prisons are more than 50% of the inmates, plus probably about up to a third of the prison guards. Now, that clearly has a profound impact on their learning and the day-to-day, how they function. And we've also worked for 30 years on assistive technologies, particularly with people with neurodiversity, dyslexia in university sector and in the workplace. And we know we can make amazing transformation of not only their productivity, also their well-being, because people on the neurodiversity range, often they don't realize they have the condition. They've always been told that the reason why they can't, they've got poor literacy is because they're either too lazy or too thick about learning. They're not intelligent enough. And that clearly has defined the way some of these people who end up in prison have taken the wrong decisions, wrong choices in life because they miss out on that education. Then they come out of school with no qualification. And obviously it leads to places where they shouldn't go. But the importance here is, if that intervention, which has been demonstrated to work, has been incredibly successful, if those are applied to rehabilitation and training and education in prisons, then we will have a much better outcome. Currently, I know that the reoffending is costing the taxpayers billions every year. Now, again, I'm not an expert in that area, but I do understand job opportunities after prison can actually stop you reoffending. So if you don't have the skills and the right training, then when you come out and you don't have any other options, then reoffending sounds and looks very attractive. So by introducing these kind of technologies, then for the education and rehabilitation, then we should see a much better outcome. And even by a small percentage of reducing the reoffending, then we're talking about billions of savings. So that's where I think we should target our effort, and certainly modernizing prisons, especially with technology. In the past year, we've learned how it's helped the mental health of the prisoners by keeping them in communication with their family because of the COVID. So it's doable. We are not actually thinking of breaking anything. We're actually thinking, well, okay, we've tried something overnight. We've changed cultures overnight. now we should introduce this into education system. And again, it's not just about prisoners. We're also talking prison guards who happen to be on that spectrum because of the past. Some of them have been to the forces and they have left school, post 16 with no real qualification, but they find the working in the forces extremely supportive and they thrive. They find, working in the police and the prisons and the blue forces kind of sector quite attractive. But again, they too benefit from the same technologies, taking notes during the day if they can't really, if they have poor literacy or poor spelling or poor reading, you can actually overcome those using the assistive technology very easily. So it's productivity as well as helping the well-being and education and rehabilitation, all in one.
Thanks, Nasser. And I think you make a good point because, from an inmate perspective, once somebody has been released, there aren't many jobs now that don't use some type of technology or another, whether you're working in a shop or in an office or any type of job requires technology. So if you don't have any of those skills when you leave and you haven't learned any of those, then it's a big challenge. So Adrian, I mentioned earlier that you oversaw the publication of the report Digital Technology in Prisons last year. So what would you add to those thoughts, please, in terms of technology and reducing pressure in prisons, please?
So I think maybe if I start by saying that I endorse everything that's just been said by Nasser so well. There's a number of issues here that go beyond perhaps the core considerations of looking at the welfare of prisoners. So that's something that I want to return to and concentrate on. There is another dynamic to this, and that's the environment of the entire prison estate. And that's quite right, points out that prison staff are going through a huge amount of stress right now. It's a very demanding job, and digital technology in prisons can go a long way to alleviating some of those pressures. And I'll move on from that in a moment, but I can say that in March 2020, the MOJ commissioned an evaluation of this, and they did find efficiencies through the use of digital technology in prisons. And that's something that we should be mindful of, because as the prison population is expected to increase, the pressures on those staff and their ability to provide safe and formative environments is going to be compromised unless we do something significant to make their jobs easier. So before I go into some of the other points about this, I want to just say we do tend to talk about recidivism a lot, and quite rightly, it costs the country about 18 billion a year, right? It makes us all less safe, less happy in our communities when there's more crime. And it also makes the person who's committing that offence less happy in their lives. So it's important to reduce recidivism. But I think we should also acknowledge that digital technology opens up an opportunity for families to stay connected again. And that's children who are confused, heartbroken at a parent being away for long periods of time, unable to really understand why a parent is disengaged in that way. And with a struggling family around them, trying to explain this and deal with a number of different complexities and challenges that's brought about by somebody being incarcerated. And so that link provides a human right, really, to people. It's the compassionate and moral thing to do. So we should never let go of the idea that while there are cost savings and there are efficiency savings, this is just the right thing to do. And that should matter, that we should want families to stay connected, and we should be protective about the plight of a child who's confused at a parent being away. But let's just get to the benefits of digital technology in prison. Well, really, I would put it down to this: meaningful family engagement being a reality, education and work training being much more easy to deliver, support, including mental health support. I won't go into it too much because Nasser has covered that, but also support for addictions and recovery. And then, of course, law and order in the prisons. So just touching on them briefly, just in headlines, so that we can have a clear understanding of where the CSJ feel about this and what the report says. We know that those that receive regular visits from family members are about 39% less likely to commit offences than those who don't. So we know that meaningful family engagement makes a massive difference to the way that people recover and reform and aim for something in life. We also hear reports of some 30 minutes a month family contact being normal for many prisoners. This is utterly unacceptable. We hear reports of digital technology not being sufficiently realistic in its application. Toddlers moving in the video, cutting the feed completely and leading to disrupted calls and heartache. So we know that if this is done well, it can have a positive impact. As to education and training, we know that around 47% of prisoners have no qualifications compared to around 15% of the general population. Some estimates say that around 60% have literacy and numeracy problems. And we know that around 11% of men are in paid employment 6 weeks after release from prison. It's not good enough. And we can do better. The support and recovery services like Forward Trust have shown the way in being able to use technology to reach out often to people post-release, using technology to embrace case progression and help people recover from addictions and get onto welfare. We've seen educational organisations like Cambridge University doing learning together projects where students learn with prisoners and people feel that they can lift their aspirations and they can be back inside a community in the way that they've never done before. This is all technically possible through technology in prison. And that's the point I just want to end this part on, which is this. Cost benefit analysis will come into this, right? How much does it cost? Is it worth it? Right. We can get into recidivism and we can talk about order in prison, administrative costs, tax revenues from people that are employed later. But I think one of the most obvious ways in which digital technology in prison can help people is it can essentially make use of that wealth of enthusiasm and resource in the community. There are mentors, recovery groups in the community, there are educators desperate to help, but they can't get through those Victorian walls without taking a whole day off to chill with a very small number of people. Digital technology is not just about digital literacy. It's about opening up all those resources in the community and putting them over the prison walls. Now, if the MOJ want to see a cost benefit here, there it is. That is a wealth of resource that would be at their disposal if they could only find the means and the infrastructure to put it in the hands of prisoners who desperately need and want it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Adrian. And some of those statistics are just, I mean, they are shocking, aren't they? In terms of, I think you said 60% of prisoners have literacy or numeracy difficulties. And Nasser, I know you also gave a statistic as well, not quite that high, but in terms of prison officers as well. So, I mean, there are many different types of digital transformation. One that I am obviously very particularly close to is speech-to-text technology, which can help inmates and prison officers because it does what it says on the tin, rather than sitting at your computer and being restricted by the keyboard and the frustrations you can have in trying to get your thoughts onto a machine and spelling correctly. So for instance, if you're trying to compile a CV to apply for a job once you've been released from prison, the actual performance of doing that is extremely hard for people with numeracy and literacy problems. And you know, from a prison officer's perspective as well, and the administrative side of the prison service, they have a huge administrative task. So anything that can be done, such as speech technology, to reduce the burden of the time it takes to produce paperwork and digital forms can only bring benefits as far as I'm concerned. And those are certainly things that our Dragon speech to text solutions can bring, and already assist police officers and lawyers and judges. So it's interesting if it's used within the MOJ, then I'd like to think it would make sense for it also to be used within the actual prison service as well. So conscious of time, just to sort of bring this sort of to its close, if I could just ask each of you, what would be the one thing that you would like people to take away from this session, really about your experience with technologies in general, or any specifics that you might like to touch upon, and how they can sort of bring business and personal benefits from it. So Nasser, shall I come back to you please with that?
Thank you. Yes, Liz. Well, technology is an enabler, empowering people who can't do certain things, either through the disability, because we are talking about people who've been disabled with a cognitive or with a neurodiversity, that the society is expecting them to perform in a particular way that the brain wasn't designed to do. Reading and writing is not natural to human beings. So we acquire that through life, education, and some people have a greater difficulty of actually acquiring that kind of a skill. So when you provide a voice to text, as you said, Dragon is a good example because of its accuracy. I mean, it is still the best in the market. If you want to do something properly, then you have to use Dragon. There are lots of voice recognitions now built into everyday devices, but we're talking about transformational, changing people's working life. We always use the Dragon. So what that does, it gives the person a voice, because if you can't communicate in writing, but you still are articulate enough, and most people can speak much better than write if they are like dyslexic, then you're able to communicate with your voice. And certainly there are other technologies that will help you to make sure what you say is turned into a grammatically correct English. So when you are making job applications, last thing you want them is to be held back because of the spelling or lack of English sort of, as a first language as it happens. So what we are saying that this transformation can be quite, amazing. They will find more confidence, and they will actually be able to go and do the things that they were unsure of and not really able to do in the past. So that's one area I think that will really help them, give them confidence, give them ability to communicate like anybody else. But what is also very important, the technology itself, the world is moving toward the digital economy, and there's going to be digital skills shortages. Now, if you're going to rehabilitate thousands of prisoners, giving them meaningful jobs and purpose, then we all get it. They're there to be punished for the crime they've committed, but they have to be released one day. They have to come back into society. What better thing to do than to give them something to come and sustain themselves and not have to go back to their old ways. And I think we could train them with digital skills. And once they've got the confidence, once they know they can, they will actually take on and they will learn these skills, and then they can make that a sustainable living for themselves when they come out of prison. And also prison guards, as I've worked with so many, I know that they too are suffering. Mental health is a big issue for them because of the previous struggle with literacy. Once they find this technology, it's totally, for them, it's totally liberating. I've met so many policemen who told me themselves that they were kept back and they didn't progress because of they couldn't pass exams or tests. And as soon as they discovered there is a way they could actually demonstrate their intelligence, but not because they can't spell, then you could find that they actually progress rapidly through the ranks as well. So I think there is a benefit all around, apart from making life more efficient for everyone. We are certainly giving people a future. And I think Dragon, I personally have worked and recommended it for more than 20 years. And I think this is really a good technology that could help a lot of people.
Thanks, Nessa. I always like to think that, you know, speech is what we've all learnt in the main, obviously from our earliest years. On the other hand, sort of using a keyboard and spelling and typing is a learned skill, which is quite difficult for certain people. So back to you, Adrian, before we close, what would your takeaway be from this session that you'd like to add, please?
So yes, thank you. I don't have the same familiarity that Nessa does, or any of you do, with Dragon, but what I can say is that our approach, the CSJ's approach to these sort of issues, is always to try and look at the root causes of them, and to try and drill down on why there are literacy issues and why there are numeracy problems, and try and head those problems off. So our instinct is really to find digital technology solutions that can help that person develop literacy skills and develop numeracy skills, because not all of the world is as accommodating as some ideal prison environments in allowing someone to go into a job without those skills, and they need to be developed. It helps that person. Now, that being said, we think, if you want to take anything away from this session, that, and I'll seal two instead of one thing, if I may, there needs to be significant investment in the digital infrastructure in the UK prison estate, right? And that has to happen quickly, because there isn't really a good case for delaying it. There is a problem that we have now where people are pulled away from their families, unable to advance themselves in education, training, employment, and often suffering addictions which could be meaningfully challenged through digital technology. So the case for doing it, and doing it now, is overwhelming. And I'd probably go further than that and say we would like to see a little bit more courage in trying new things and understanding that if you're going to help somebody, you need to meet them where they are. And actually, if there's technological solutions that can make something possible where it's impossible now, so someone filling in a form when they're illiterate, but they still need to do that to realise other rights in their lives, that seems to me to be sensible. And so it seems to me that investment's needed. It's needed now. We need to make sure that it's pervasive across the prison estate, and that access is subject to security issues as universal as it can be, and that we are imaginative about how to use technology and how it can really help people. And so my view is do more of it, do it now, and be braver about what's commissioned. Excellent,
thank you. Well, I know we could talk about this all day, but obviously we have time constraints. So I shall close this session for now, and I would really like to thank Adrian and Nessa for joining us, and to everyone who's watching this, wherever you may be. But that's it for us for now. So obviously, please reach out for any further information after our session today. So Adrian, Nessa, and everyone watching, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you.